Albert Gonzalez was not born into power, wealth, or privilege. There was no dramatic childhood moment that predicted he would one day become the central figure in the largest credit card theft in history. He grew up quietly, surrounded by ordinary routines, schools, and expectations. But while others learned how the world worked on the surface, Gonzalez learned how it worked underneath. He was drawn to systems, patterns, and invisible connections. Computers were not machines to him, they were environments, places where rules existed only until someone understood them well enough to bend them. As a teenager, he spent countless hours online, moving through early hacker forums, IRC channels, and underground communities where curiosity was rewarded and caution was essential. This was not about chaos or rebellion at first. It was about access, about knowing something others did not, about seeing doors that most people never realized were there. By his late teens, Gonzalez had already crossed from curiosity into capability. He understood how networks communicated, how data moved, how companies trusted their own infrastructure too much. He learned to listen instead of rushing, to observe traffic instead of attacking it, to wait instead of forcing entry. That patience would later define everything he became. While many hackers chased attention, Gonzalez avoided it. He preferred silence. He preferred remaining unknown. And in the early 2000s, silence was protection. Law enforcement did not yet fully understand how deep cybercrime had gone, and corporations still believed firewalls were walls instead of illusions. In that gap between belief and reality, Gonzalez found opportunity. The underground economy he entered was not chaotic or disorganized. It had structure, rules, and hierarchies. Stolen data was currency. Access was reputation. Trust was earned slowly and lost instantly. Credit card numbers, personal identities, login credentials, all of it moved quietly through encrypted channels, traded like commodities. Gonzalez did not just participate in this world, he learned how to manage it. He connected people who had access with people who had buyers. He built relationships without revealing himself. He understood that the real risk was not hacking a system, but being seen doing it. And for years, he wasn't. Eventually, attention found him anyway. In the early 2000s, Gonzalez was arrested for credit card fraud-related activities. It should have been the end of his story. Instead, it became the beginning of something far more dangerous. Facing serious prison time, Gonzalez made a choice that many criminals believe will save them. He agreed to cooperate with the authorities. The Secret Service and federal investigators saw value in him. He knew the underground. He knew how hackers communicated, how stolen data moved, how criminals avoided detection. Gonzalez became an informant. On paper, he was now working for the government, helping them dismantle cybercrime networks from the inside. To the authorities, he was an asset. To the underground, he appeared unchanged. And to himself, he was something else entirely. This double life was where the real story begins. While reporting some criminals to law enforcement, Gonzalez quietly continued building his own operations. He had learned something critical from his arrest: how investigators thought, what they prioritized, and what they missed. Being inside the system gave him camouflage, it gave him confidence, it gave him time. He was no longer just avoiding law enforcement, he was watching them from close range. Every meeting, every briefing, every request for information taught him more about how to stay invisible. And invisibility in the digital world is power. Around the mid-2000s, Gonzalez shifted his focus from individual fraud to something much larger. Instead of stealing data after transactions happened, he targeted the systems that processed them. Retailers, payment processors, and corporations had begun storing massive amounts of customer information digitally, often without proper encryption. Wireless networks inside stores were poorly secured. Internal databases trusted that anyone inside the network belonged there. Gonzalez understood that he did not need to break into vaults if he could simply walk through the front door unnoticed. He and his associates began exploiting wireless vulnerabilities, parking near stores, capturing data as it traveled through the air. The information flowed continuously, silently, and in staggering quantities. One of the first major targets was TJX Companies, the parent company of retailers like TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Over time, Gonzalez's operation captured data from millions of transactions. Customers had no idea their credit card numbers were being siphoned off in real time. Stores continued operating normally. Cashiers smiled, receipts printed, and beneath it all, data was bleeding out invisibly. Gonzalez stored the stolen information on servers he controlled, often located in foreign countries, layered behind multiple proxies. He did not rush to sell everything at once. He understood market value. Flooding the underground with too much data would attract attention. Instead, he released it gradually, feeding an ecosystem that thrived on stolen identities. As his operation expanded, so did his confidence. He was no longer just stealing credit card numbers. He was managing logistics, coordinating teams, and maintaining infrastructure that ran continuously. He built databases containing tens of millions of records. He hired programmers to maintain systems. He paid collaborators in cash, wire transfers, and cryptocurrency. And all the while, he continued his role as an informant, offering law enforcement selective information that never pointed back to him. To investigators, he appeared helpful. To corporations, he was invisible. To the victims, he did not exist at all. The scale of the thefts grew beyond anything the cybercrime world had seen before. Heartland Payment Systems, one of the largest credit card processors in the United States, was breached. This was not a small retailer. This was infrastructure. Gonzalez exploited a vulnerability that allowed him to intercept data moving through Heartland's systems, collecting information from transactions across thousands of businesses. The number of compromised cards climbed into tens of millions, then higher. Financial institutions began noticing patterns. Fraud spiked across the country. Banks reissued cards. Consumers were confused, angry, and unaware of the source. Something was happening beneath the surface, and no one could yet see its shape. Behind the scenes, Gonzalez lived carefully but comfortably. He rented apartments, traveled, and spent money in ways that would later seem reckless. Luxury cars, cash withdrawals, a lifestyle that slowly contradicted his official income. But for years, no one connected the dots. Cybercrime investigations were fragmented. Jurisdictional boundaries slowed cooperation. Companies were reluctant to disclose breaches publicly, and Gonzalez exploited every delay. Time was his ally. Every day that passed without discovery made the next day feel safer. Eventually, cracks began to form. Investigators started linking breaches together. The methods were similar. The timing overlapped. The scale suggested coordination. Law enforcement agencies began sharing information more aggressively. International cooperation increased. And quietly, without fanfare, attention began drifting toward the one person who seemed to be present in too many places at once. The informant who always knew the underground too well. The man whose explanations grew thinner over time. Surveillance intensified. Digital footprints were re-examined. Servers were traced, and the silence Gonzalez relied on began to fail him. By the time the full picture emerged, the damage was already done. Over 170 million credit cards had been stolen. Billions of dollars were lost through fraud, remediation, and security overhauls. Entire industries were forced to change how they handled data. New laws were proposed. Payment systems were redesigned. Consumers lost trust. and Albert Gonzalez, the teenager who once explored networks out of curiosity, stood at the center of the largest financial data breach the world had ever seen, exposed not as a helpful informant, but as the architect of a digital crime empire hidden in plain sight. And yet, even as the case closed in on him, the most unsettling truth remained. Gonzalez did not rely on extraordinary exploits or futuristic tools. He relied on assumptions that no one would listen to wireless traffic, assumptions that internal networks were safe, assumptions that informants were loyal. His success was less about brilliance and more about patience combined with negligence. He waited while systems trusted themselves. He listened while companies ignored warnings. He acted only when silence protected him. And that is what makes his story uncomfortable. It suggests that the greatest threats often emerge not from chaos, but from routine. The arrest did not come with